Welcome to the And She Looked Up Creative Hour podcast with Lisa Bolton and Melissa Hartfield. We're two women who are artists and entrepreneurs, and yes, those two things can go together. This podcast is for the artists, the creators, and the makers who want to find a way to make a living creating what they love.
Hi everybody, it's Lisa. I just wanted to pop on and let you know that if you're just tuning into this episode, this is actually part 2 of our pricing series. So last week in episode 14, we had a really robust conversation on pricing, and because the conversation ran a little long, we decided to split it into 2. So this is part 2. So if you've already listened to episode 14, this will be the continuation of that. And if you haven't, I would suggest popping back and taking that one in first, and that'll get you up to speed for this conversation we're about to have. So I'll leave it at that, and you can jump in where you left off. So I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. What is your thoughts on price transparency? And by that, I mean, should people have their prices on their website? And I'm not talking about an Etsy shop. Like, I'm talking about if you offer digital services, coaching, teaching.
Service.
Yeah, service-based.
Yeah.
Do you think that people, I think there's 2 schools of thought, and I kind of go back and forth between the 2. But what are your thoughts on just laying it out there and saying, this is what I charge?
I fall in the middle. I am the type of person that when I am looking around for something, I want to get a sense of what the range is. So I do like to see, not necessarily detailed pricing, but I do like to get a sense of like, what am I in for? But at the same time, no, I don't necessarily think that you should put everything out there. So what I like to do for myself, and we don't put our pricing on FBC, but we do have it in our media kit. And when I say pricing, what I mean is we have services starting at, and we put our minimum amount to work with us. And that's what I usually would put on my website as well, is services starting at. So people know what the minimum investment is, so it helps with tire kickers, right? Like people who are just poking around and maybe aren't really serious. But if somebody sees that to work with you, is going to be a minimum of $1,000, there's going to be a group of people who are going to drop off right there because they just don't have $1,000. So you do know that when you get people coming in and making inquiries, they've seen that. They know that I got to come up with at least $1,000 to even have a conversation with you. Well, not have a conversation, but, to move forward with you. So I do feel like that. But do you need to price out every single package? It also depends on how you're selling. If you're selling those, like if people are purchasing those packages online, like maybe it's a course or a coaching package or something like that, and they're booking online, then yeah, you do need to include your prices. But in other project-based work, we do a lot of that at FBC. I do a lot of that as a designer. Yeah, I really don't want to quote you a price until I've had a chance to chat with you. But I'm also not going to work with you for less than this amount of money. And that's something that tends to come as you go a little further along. Like when I first started out, I didn't have a base work with me price. I would do pretty much anything. But as I moved along and as my client base became more stable and as I became a lot more confident in my abilities and what I could do and what I enjoyed doing and what I was good at doing, I knew what people needed to come up with to work with me to make it worth, I don't want to say make it worth my time. That doesn't sound very good. There's just a certain point where to do something for $100 really wasn't going to be a good fit for me.
Yeah.
There's other people out there that it would be a good fit for. Having said that, I do offer some a la carte packages, like for certain services that I do. And a lot of my clients know those prices. I don't have them on my website because my website needs to be rejigged, but they probably will go on the website for those very specific packages. And I think that's where it can be okay to put your pricing, all your pricing on the website, is if you're offering something very specific where it's a cookie cutter package. You get this, and this, no substitutions. The lunchtime specials on the menu at your favorite restaurant, right? It's $9.99, no substitutions.
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy to have. I think that there's different schools of thought on whether you should have them out there. And I think the starting at is a really nice way to go because it does get rid of people that you already are not going to be able to do business with. And then it kind of takes that out of from an efficiency perspective anyway, it takes it out of your workflow, having to sort of constantly go back with no or rejection letters. You're sending out media kits all the time. So yeah, having a place for that. But I know it's a question that comes up quite often is, should I have my rates public or not?
Yeah. And a good thing to also do, if that's something you're wrestling with, is to look around at other people in your industry, because in certain industries it is expected. Like I can think one in certain photography niches like wedding and seniors portraits and things like that. People do want to see your pricing on your website. They're shopping around and take a look at what else people in your niche are doing. And if you notice that, yeah, everybody has their pricing on there, then you probably are going to have to put your pricing out, or people are going to skip past you.
Yeah, no, that's a good strategy. What other things did you have on your list?
Discounting. Should you discount or should you not discount? So by discounting, I mean this is something we're seeing a lot of right now during this COVID-19 pandemic, where a lot of people are struggling to bring dollars in. And so you're seeing a lot of people discounting their work, like they're offering their signature program at 30% off or 50% off, or take my course for X amount of dollars instead of this amount of dollars, that kind of thing. What do you think about that?
I 100% think that if you need to do that to keep the lights on, you've got a situation where you need to take some drastic action in order to keep things afloat for your business. I absolutely see no issue with that.
Yeah, what if we didn't have a pandemic going on? Are you in favor of putting on a sale?
Yeah, 100%. I think that, yeah, if it's for the right strategic reasons, like I think you have to ask yourself, why is my revenue slipped to the point where I feel like I need to? So am I better served discounting my product in order to bring in new customers in hopes of exponentially selling them different services? Or am I doing it because sales have completely dropped off, no one's buying my product anymore, which would concern me as to the quality, timeliness, so there's something that needs to fundamentally change about my product or service that I'm offering. So I think that a lot of it has to do with, why do you feel the need to do it? If it's like, you know what, twice a year I put on this item on sale. Like I think if it's a product and you're like, hey, I'm blowing it out and I'm gonna, bring in some new inventory, fantastic. I think even if it's of a service, if you're like, I'm just not sure of my customer base, if this is really working for me, I'm gonna put it on sale and see if maybe it's price that's been holding people back. And in fact, I'm gonna bring on board some new clients of high quality that, well, maybe I was just priced out of market for whatever reason. So absolutely, I have no issue with it for whatever reason, provided it's just strategically advance your business, if that's your intention. If you're looking to grow or expand or find some efficiencies, then yeah, I would see no issue with putting those sales on. And sometimes it's exactly what you need to do to spark some life into your business. If you're finding things are stale, if you're looking to reach new people, if you're looking to reach a customer base that maybe would not necessarily seek out your product or service, and this is a way to get them in the door. It's how I've definitely tried different products and services over the years, knowing that, that first one, whether it's your first subscription, your first month is free, you get a 2-week free trial, or you get your first order at 50% off. Like, absolutely, that brings people in the door. But you have to decide if that's going to be sort of an ongoing strategy. Is this acting as a loss leader for you? So it's such a personal decision based on where you're at in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I am not opposed to discounting if you are, as you said, doing it for strategic reasons. Where I do get a little bit concerned with discounting is if you train your customer to never pay full price. Where I see this happening a lot is like with Cyber Monday and Black Friday sales. There's a lot of people who just won't buy anything until they go on sale on those days, particularly in the digital content space. So I think you have to be really careful with that. And it's been really funny to watch during this toilet paper crisis that we've been going through, because having worked in drug retail, toilet paper is always a loss leader. It's one of those things that goes on sale every 4 to 6 weeks on the front page of the circular. And it's always sold well below cost. And so what I have seen is that when people find toilet paper right now, they're all excited, and then they see the price and they're like, oh, we're being price gouged. And it's like, no, you're not being price gouged. What you're seeing is the actual retail price, not on sale. But you have been so trained to know that you can get that toilet paper at this cheap price if you wait 4 weeks, that now when you're seeing what the actual cost of it is, you're upset, you're angry.
Yeah.
That's a risky run if you discount regularly, is that you just train your customer to never, they're just going to wait till it goes on sale because they know it will. Mm-hmm. So I do think you need to be careful there. But then you have other companies who were Canadian and growing up, when we did, Boxing Day was a huge thing, right? Like there were companies, the only time they ever put anything on sale was Boxing Day for like that one day.
And you had to get it in person.
And you had to get it in person. You had to go line up. Like people would go line up right after they ate their Christmas dinner, right? For their A&B sound. And I think Harry Rosen was another one that would do it. Like if you needed a new suit, you would go. So there can be some benefit to discounting very strategically like that, to people being like, this is, oh my God, this is the only time that anything is going to go on sale in that person's Etsy or a Shopify store, right? Like, and you don't know what it's going to be that's going to go on sale, right? Because it's not the same thing every time. So if you do it strategically, I think it can be a really useful tactic.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a really good point. You don't want to train them to only, especially if you're something that people only purchase once or twice a year. You know, if you've got that situation, then yeah, I think that's a really good point, that it can't be almost predictable by your customer base.
Right. And then another thing that we haven't really touched on is different rates for different groups of people. So this is something I see getting argued over a lot. Should you charge the same amount to a nonprofit or a charity as you charge to a multinational brand, as you charge to a small business in your neighborhood or a school kid? And so there's some people think that yes, you should charge the same to everybody. Other people feel that you should discount to certain groups. I personally do charge different rates for different groups, but not everybody does. And for me, it's more of a personal just belief system, I guess. I just feel like a charity shouldn't have to pay as much. But I do want to caution on this, is just because somebody is a nonprofit, and often nonprofits and charities will bring this up during the pricing conversation. Well, we're a charity or we're a nonprofit. We don't have a big budget. Is there any way you could do this work for free? And I just want to make it clear, charities and nonprofits have budgets. They have money. They don't have as much money to spend, and they are often working on a very shoestring budget, but they do have money. We can talk about working for free in a second, because I think that's a big one too that we should address. But don't feel you have to work for free just because the nonprofit card is pulled. You don't. They do have a budget, and your time is valuable. You know, if it is a cause that is near and dear to your heart and you want to donate your time, by all means. But, you know, if this is just somebody that you don't really have a relationship with and this is a job, you deserve to get paid for what you're doing.
Yeah, it comes down to having proper filters set up in your business from a strategic point of view, so that when these opportunities come, if it is important to you to have a piece of your work that you give back for free, whether that be to students or to charities, nonprofits, then have a number in mind. And whether that's the number of hours you're willing to dedicate to it or the cost of goods you're willing to dedicate to, but have a number. And when that number is filled up for the year, it becomes an unemotional decision. It becomes a polite no, because your bucket is full. And it's not even, you don't even have to provide a reason to the charity. I think there's very great ways that you can calculate. We've talked about email templates and having those ready to go, but you have to take the emotion out of that feeling and truly separate yourself from your business. Design your business in a way that you're still checking those boxes if they're important to you. So if it's important to you that you have a student offering and it profitably makes sense for you, then you should have one, and you should have constraints around that offering. Otherwise, you too will be a nonprofit because you won't be making any money. So just like they have a shoestring budget, I suspect that most of the people listening to us are also operating on budgets that are not limitless. And just because their budget, it's maybe smaller, larger than yours, doesn't matter. You have to do what's right for your entity. And the sooner you can sort of separate yourself from your business, if you're truly looking to, grow profitably, you can do that in a way that is altruistic and giving back and community forward. You definitely can, but you have to have checks and balances in place in your business plan to say, I've already met my quota for that this year, and I'm going to have to say no. I'm going to put you on the list for next year and turn the page and move forward with making, money for your business. But you just have to set up a system that helps you filter that and make those decisions quickly. And that can be really hard for creatives, I think, when you really do want to give back. And it is, your art, and people might not understand that. And I think it can weigh heavy when you're coming from a place that you want to give. And so if you can try to find that separation of church and state and say, nope, like I feel good about the strategy that I have in place going forward, then that will make those decisions to do, whether it's work for free or to do discounting, a lot easier.
So what we do at Food Bloggers of Canada is we have our charity of choice. And that is the charity that we choose to work with on an ongoing basis, long-term basis. And all the work we do for them and with them is pro bono. We don't charge them for anything. It makes it very easy when another charity group or organization comes along and says, we'd love to do this with you. Can you do it for free or whatever, or we're looking for support. Or when you become a business, you're going to get inundated with requests from very worthwhile organizations and people who are doing really meaningful work, and you just can't say yes to them all. But being able to say to somebody who comes along, what you're doing sounds fantastic. Unfortunately, we can only work with one charity of choice per year, and this is who we're working with right now, and we're unable to help you in the way that you would like. You can always offer, there's so many other ways to help worthwhile causes without working for free, without providing your services for free. I mean, you can do things like you can answer phones for them, you can help them with, pledge drives, or there's lots of different things you can do that are more active. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's things you can do for these organizations in your spare time if you choose to, if they're important to you, without distracting from your work time where you need to make money to feed your family.
Well, I think one of the stickiest things came for me was requests from friends and family. Like that was one of the hardest things as a creator, where people would ask and it would get sticky and icky. And I really had to have a plan in place for how I would handle that. And it did get to be too much at one point where I really felt like, I'm doing a lot of this extra effort that I really do want to do. These are people that I cherish in my life, and I do want to, but there is a limit. And I know that I didn't set up proper limits early on in the process, and it almost made it harder to scale it back. And so I found that even for myself harder than externals asking for things. It was actually easier to say no to them than it was to say no to friends and family.
And that's something I learned very quickly, working for myself, is that I really don't recommend working for your friends for free. I really strongly recommend that you charge them and that you make them sign a contract. You don't need to charge them your full rates. That's completely up to you, but you should charge them something and you should make them sign a contract, because that strongly encourages them to take it seriously and to understand that you are a professional and that you are doing this work. They tend to respect your process and the entire process more if you just put in those few small steps. And whether you charge them 50% of what you normally would or charge them full price, it's up to you. But you need to make it clear that it's not a favor that you're doing them. Right? And that can be really hard. But once I put that in place, honestly, I've never had anybody freak out at it. Most people, when they realize this is serious, they take it seriously. So that sort of brings us to the last one, which is working for free. And this comes up in the blogging world a lot. And I suspect it comes up in other places. It comes up in the design world under the term of working for spec. And so working for spec is when you are maybe asked to submit, specific to the design context, you might be asked to submit 3 designs for a client to look at, to decide, mock-ups for a client to look at before they decide whether they're going to go with you or not. You don't get paid to do this, but it's the only way you can win the job. There's a lot of very strong feelings around this. I personally do not love this practice. I don't love it. But having said that, there have been times in my life where money has been extremely tight and I needed the work, and this was the only way to get it. But be aware that you can put your foot down with things like that. You don't need to do that. And quite often what companies will do is they'll put something out to tender to various potential designers and ask all of them to submit a design. If they go with the other person's design, you've just spent all those hours putting that design together and you didn't get paid a dime for it. In fact, you were told it wasn't good enough. So that's a tricky one. But this also happens a lot in the blogging world where brands will offer to send you product for free in exchange for writing a blog post for them or giving them a social media shout out or any of those things. And there's two schools of thoughts on this. There's a lot of people who say flat out, absolutely not. And then there's other people who see it as a way to start a relationship. I see both sides of it, and I don't have an issue with either one. If you feel that, you're not going to do that for free, don't do it. But it is a really valuable way to start a relationship. Sometimes it takes a really long time to land a client that you really want to have. There's a lot of trust building that has to happen before they're willing to spend the money. And sometimes a little bit of goodwill by giving them a shout out or by promoting them in your newsletter or something like that can go a long way to that. We had a client with FBC who we spent 4 or 5 years kind of going through this process with them. They had never worked with bloggers or influencers of any kind. And this was a large national client. They came to our conference one year, not as sponsors. They just came as observers. I can't remember if we gave them a free ticket or not, or we might have given them one free ticket and they paid for the other one, and it was just kind of like nurturing them along. Like we could see that if we made this connection with them, that this would be a big client to work with and a really great client to work with, because we could tell that they were a good group of people. But they were nervous. We had to build that level of trust. It took a long time, but it wound up being worth it. Financially, it wound up being worth it. So this is why I don't necessarily say no to working for free. But you have to be strategic about it, and you have to put boundaries in place when you do it.
Yeah, there has to be a reason. And otherwise, you're just doing a hobby. And it's really how the influencer market rose, right? Was that people started really getting, it starts with product and then it started getting paid. And so that more effort is put in by both parties to elevate that relationship. And that really was the rise of the influencer relationship. And I just go back to this being transactional. And if it makes sense for you to do it for free, then you should do it for free and not worry about if that isn't what others are doing. But I would say that you have to really understand the future relationship you want with this client. Perhaps you're just looking to build your portfolio, build your experience. I think that asking yourself those questions as you're evaluating these opportunities is really going to help you decide whether to enter into that contract or not, but also what the future might look like. Like, are you going into this relationship doing work for free, and there's going to be the ongoing expectation that you will continue to do this post or this photograph in exchange for product for perpetuity, or is there growth opportunity there to further monetize the relationship in a more formal way down the road? And that's the part where I think that's only up to you as the artist and the creator to make sure that means that it's worth your while. It's just being incredibly intentional with those decisions, and sometimes that can be hard up front when you're just excited about the opportunity that somebody wants to pay you or to take on your work and have it, either send you something for it or just promote your work or whatnot. So it's just so highly personal.
Yeah, and you'll hear a lot of people say things like, my landlord doesn't accept coupons for rent and things like that. I do want to caution, when you are first starting out and you get that first offer and it is an offer of free product in exchange for something, first of all, it's super exciting that somebody's noticed you. But you do really have to step back and think about, why are they coming to me? Would they come to this particular person and make that same offer? Or are they just coming to me because they view me as too small to warrant paying? And never think you're too small, because you can make a lot of money by being very small. I want to make that really clear. You are in a niche, a tiny niche, but that tiny niches can make a lot of money. So don't fall into this trap that you need of thinking that you need to have 10,000 followers or 100,000 followers or 500,000 followers for anyone to pay you money. That's so not true.
And free can also be their starting offer.
Yeah.
Like, keep in mind that free is a starting point. It's not the end point. It might be for this particular organization, but I would say consider it a starting point. And my second point with that would be, I would encourage people to stop being insulted by when they are offered or asked to do work for free. I think sometimes I've noticed in some of these groups that discuss about things that, it just fuels the fire when someone says the nerve of someone and the nerve. We're all operating as businesses. If I can get something for free simply by asking for it and it meets the needs of my project, why would I pay for it? Of course I'll get it for free. Like, I just don't see the harm in people are allowed to ask, and you can politely refuse and move on with your day. Like, I just don't see it taking I don't see it kind of comes down to the whole house negotiation. If you've ever bought and sold a house where people get, I'm using air quotes, insulted by an offer that comes in on your house. It's an offer. You say no, thank you, and you move forward. I think so much of this, because our work is so tied emotionally, the product or service we put so much of ourselves into it. It can be very hard to separate the little chunk of piece that is the business side of you. It's the for-profit side. Pull that chunk out. Don't be insulted. Just say no, thank you. Don't, get on the Facebook groups and ranting and raving. Don't be bad-mouthing clients. Don't be shaming. Like, it's no big deal. They've made you an offer. You said no. They could have offered you $100. You might have said no. Like, if it's not the right price for you, either go back and ask for more money or let them know what your rates are, or say no thank you and bow out and start going back to being inspired and creating something new, but don't dwell on it.
Yes, and I would like to make 2 points about this. First of all, you just briefly mentioned one of them. You get an offer you don't like, counter. It's not hard, okay? Offers are not built in stone. If somebody comes to you and says, hey, we'd love to give you 5 coupons for tomatoes in exchange for a social media shout out, you can write back and say, hey, love your product. Unfortunately, I'm not able to work for free product, but I'd be happy to do this for $100 or whatever your rate is. And this leads me to the next one. If you are in these Facebook groups and you go, and I see this all the time, and trust me, people make note of you when you do this. If you go into Facebook groups and go on a little rant about company XYZ just sent me this email asking me to do this for this amount of money or for no money. Can you believe the nerve of them? And even screen capping and putting the emails in, and sometimes even putting the person's name in. And I just want to say, unless you know who every single person in that group is and what they do for a living, don't do that. Don't ever do that. Because I am in so many groups where I don't participate. I just lurk. And I have seen people bash our clients. People even talk about campaigns that we are working on where they have badmouthed them. And I'm just sitting there going, we're not going to be talking to you again. And in some cases, if they had just simply emailed back and said, you know what, this is below my normal rate, but here's what I do normally work for, in a lot of cases, we would have been able to accommodate them. Like, it never hurts to ask. The worst you're going to hear is, I'm sorry, we just don't have the budget this time around. But we'll make note of your rates for the next project, because often that happens. If you're somebody that they're interested in working in, and oftentimes for that campaign, there may not be any extra budget, but they'll make note of you for the next one, and they'll come to you with a special offer geared toward what your rates are. I was in a group once where a campaign was being badmouthed, and I happened to be good friends with the person who was running the campaign, who was not in the group. And I mentioned it to her, and she knew immediately who it was because everybody else had accepted the offer except for one person. So she knew who it was. And even though I hadn't told her, and she said, you know what? She didn't even respond. If she had just emailed me and told me what she needed to get out of this, I would have been able to talk to her and work with her on it. But instead, this person went and badmouthed and ranted and screen capped the whole offer and put it into a group where the entire group climbed onto the post and went off on, oh, I'm never going to work with that brand again. And it looked bad. And this person is not going to get another offer because of what they did. And even if you're not somebody who posts those things, be very careful about commenting on them as well, because that gets noticed too. And there are a lot of bloggers who also wear PR hats. You would be amazed at how many bloggers who are in those groups also work for PR firms.
It doesn't move your business forward.
It doesn't, and it just makes you look like a jerk, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and you got into the work to do your creative art. If you could look back, talk to your future self and say, wow, at some point in my life, someone's going to be offering me X amount of dollars to do this work. And maybe at this point you're insulted by it. But if you'd asked yourself when you first started out, if someone be offering you that, you may have been very happy about that. And there's so much ego tied up in pricing that does not advance your art. It does not advance your business and it doesn't inspire creativity or positivity, I just think there's no place for it. And it's so tied to ego. And
Yeah.
let it go. If you didn't get the price you were asking for, it's a negotiation. Everyone's got budgets, and move forward, close the door and move forward. I completely agree with you. I think it's a lot of wasted energy that could be really directed towards your next project or to making something beautiful, and it just doesn't serve any purpose. You can definitely vent. I mean, you can have a good laugh about it.
Talk to a close friend or your partner, just a small group of people who you really trust, but don't put it out there into places like Facebook and social media and groups that you think are private that aren't really that private. Like there's no need for it. And there's no need to shame, ridicule, or be unkind.
Everything online is permanent. And whatever you say, even if you delete it, it always will exist forever.
You just have to be careful. There's no need to do those kinds of things. It's unprofessional, and it's so easy to just hit reply and a very grateful and kind response. And by that, I mean, you can express gratitude that they were thinking of you, or that they thought this would be a good fit for you, or that they like your work. Like, there's so many ways to flip it around and just say, I'm flattered that you think I'm a good fit for this, or it's so nice to hear that you enjoy my work. Unfortunately, what you are offering is not a good fit for me right now. Here's my minimum starting rate to work with me that we talked about earlier in the episode. If circumstances should change, or if you have a little more room in your budget, I would love it if you would think of me in the future.
Send and moved on. Yeah, exactly. No.
Like we talked about last week, make it a template that you just copy and paste for every single one. Change a few words and to make it suit the situation, but it's not that hard. And if you are in a position where you're able to employ a VA, have your VA handle those situations for you with the same kind of language. Just, we're so glad that you were thinking of Lisa for this project. Unfortunately, she's booked up right now, and this just does not fit her minimum rates, but here's what she's normally available to work at, and send it off, right?
Be grateful that you have so many inquiries you've had to do a template.
Yes, because you know what? When you're not getting the emails or the phone calls, that's when you need to worry, right? Like, better that you're getting them than not getting them.
I totally agree. Yeah. I think just to sum it up, like, we really have sort of gone through a lot of different pieces of all the components to pricing, but it comes down to treating your business like a for-profit business, taking the emotion out, taking the ego out, being strategic about your pricing decisions. They shouldn't be made on a whim, like slowing down your pricing process so you're giving yourself time and really understanding who your customer is, the profile of that customer. There's probably several of them. And understanding if the opportunity that comes in, do you have a price for that opportunity, be it a charitable one or a for-profit one, that makes sense to advance your business in a profitable way?
That's right. You can always say no. You can always say no kindly and gently. You are going to deal with some trial and error as your business grows. If you haven't guessed it by now after listening to this whole episode, pricing has so many variables, and there's a lot that goes into it, both psychologically and from a basic fact, the fact of how much it costs you to make something. It's a balancing act, and it's something that you're probably going to tinker with your entire career, and you're going to make some mistakes, but it's okay. There's very few pricing mistakes that are hard to recover from. There's always a strategy to raise your rates. There's always strategies to bring in more clients or customers. So don't be afraid to experiment. Don't get too upset with yourself if something doesn't work out quite the way that you hoped for. Now you've learned from that experience.
Exactly.
Well, we covered a lot today.
It's a pretty robust conversation, and I suspect we'll, down the road be able to do a follow-up and perhaps even talk to some individuals that have had some experience with pricing, that I think, to get even more insight on it, because it is really one of the key cornerstones of moving your business ahead, is nailing down a pricing strategy.
Yeah, and actually something that might be kind of fun, we just launched our Instagram account this week and she looked up, if you want to seek us out there and follow us. But maybe that would be something fun that we could ask after this episode in our stories, is like, did we cover your price? Do you have a pricing question for us? And maybe it'd be fun in a few months to do like a pricing Q&A episode. Where we answer.
Oh, great idea.
answer some of your questions, specific questions, and see if we can help you out a little bit more, because pricing is a beast. You can always wrangle the beast.
I hope that you took away some really good strategies on pricing. And if you did, and you enjoyed this episode, and you do think that there might be someone in your life, a fellow creator, peer, colleague, entrepreneur that might benefit in that, I do appreciate if you share the podcast and let them know about it, because we're always looking to build our community and just to get more insight. The more creators and makers and beautiful people we have in this community, I think the more robust and the more we can give back to it. So we appreciate any time you share the episodes that you enjoy to other creatives.
Yeah, and if you did enjoy this, we would love it if you would leave us a review over on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. It does help other people like you find us.
Excellent. Well, we'll be back next week with a whole new topic that hopefully will be inspiring and educating and help you move your business forward.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. Be sure to check out the show notes for any links or resources we talked about in this episode. If you enjoyed the chat, please be sure to subscribe and you'll automatically receive any new shows we release. And finally, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a review, tell us where you're listening from, or just send a note to say hi. You can find us at andshelookedup.com or on Instagram with the same handle. Thanks for listening.